record. Okay, so now we will continue on this third session. We did Haggai Chapter 1 yesterday, and today we're going to look at Haggai Chapter 2. And if you are following in the syllabus that I put together, this is page 19. I'm not going to follow this exactly as I did it in the syllabus as I was going through this. There's a few more things I thought we should look at, and I thought it might be a little more logical to do it a different way. So the information's in the syllabus. I'm just not going to follow exactly the order that's in there. But chapter 2 of Haggai, there's 3 prophecies given in this, and we're going to handle each prophecy one at a time. The first one is recorded in Haggai chapter 2, verses 1 through 9. Occurred on the 7th month, 21st day of the 7th month. The second prophecy in this chapter is in Haggai chapter 2, verses 10 through 19. This one occurred on the 24th day of the 9th month. And then there's a third prophecy, a very short one at the end that ends out Haggai, and that's verses 20 through 24, and that was on the 24th day of the 9th month. So we'll do these one at a time. I wanted to look at a few more things here in this first one. So I don't think we're going to get to the third prophecy tonight. I'll probably start next week with that. I don't think we'll get to that. I'd like these to be around 45 minutes. I don't really want these to go longer than that. So I think we'll just get through these first two. Hopefully we'll get through these first two. Let's see how we go. So here is Haggai chapter 2, verses 1 through 9. And we read part of this last week to close out last week, looking at that he encouraged them not to fear, but we'll look at more details on this time. But let me read the entire prophecy. On the 21st of the 7th month, the word of Yahweh came by Haggai, the prophet, saying, "Speak now to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and to the remnant of the people, saying, who is left among you who saw this temple in its former glory? And how do you see it now? Does it seem like nothing in comparison? But now take courage, Zerubbabel, declares Yahweh. Take courage also, Joshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest. And all you people of the land, take courage, declares Yahweh, and work, for I am with you, declares Yahweh of hosts. As for the promise which I made to you when you came out of Egypt, my spirit is abiding in your midst. Do not fear, for thus says Yahweh of hosts, once more, in a little while, and I am going to shake the heavens and the earth, and the sea also, and the dry land. And I will shake all the nations, and they will come with the wealth of all nations, and I will fill this house with glory, says Yahweh of hosts. The silver is mine, the gold is mine, declares Yahweh of hosts. The latter glory of this house will be greater than the former, says Yahweh of hosts. And in this place I will give peace, declares Yahweh of hosts. So first, who he's speaking to here is, again, Zerubbabel, the governor, Joshua, the high priest, and to the remnant of the people. That's who he's speaking to on this 21st day of the 7th month. They'd been there. This had been almost a month now. They started working on the 24th day of the 6th month. So just under a month of working on the rebuilding from the foundation upward is when this prophecy is given. And he asks them this question. And he says, who is left among you who saw this temple in its former glory? How do you see it now? Does it seem to you like nothing in comparison? The temple in this former glory is referring to Solomon's temple. And Solomon's temple was magnificent. That temple was destroyed in 586 BC. Now, where we are now, it's about 66 and a half years later. And all they have is a foundation. At the location of the temple was, they have a foundation that's been dormant for over 10 years. and they've been working for about a month. At the time they arrived from Babylon, if you remember, they built an altar. This is before they laid the foundation. At that time, from Ezekiel, it said there were those who had seen the Temple of Solomon. And that's in Ezra 3:12. We read this on the first week. Yet many of the priests and Levites, the heads of households, the old men who had seen the first temple, wept with a loud voice when the foundation of this house was laid before their eyes, while many shouted aloud for joy. So now, so clearly there's some people that still, even this 10 more years later, are still around, these older people now that were there when they went into captivity, that were there when the first temple, had seen the first temple in Jerusalem. And about 66 and a half years later, here they are. And that temple was magnificent. Solomon's temple, according to some of what was the Greek person that had the seven wonders of the ancient world, it was one of the seven ancient wonders. Solomon's temple was incredibly, when you read the details of it. So here they are coming back out of captivity. They're not even really a nation anymore. They don't have a king. Zerubbabel's the governor, Joshua's the high priest. And it might seem what they're doing is a bit overwhelming. If you looked back at the temple that they had and what they have now, because now they have nothing. They have this foundation. And that's what he's asking. How does it seem? Does it seem like nothing in comparison? Probably did. And this is where we looked at these verses last week. He says, take courage, Zerubbabel. Take courage, Joshua. All you people, take courage, for I am with you. Do not be afraid. Get to work. Get to work building. And then before we go on to other things, I did want to mention this. I'm probably not going to bring this up again, but it occurs here several times right here in this prophecy. And that's the phrase Yahweh of hosts, or as it's in the Bible's Lord of hosts with all capital Lords. We know it's Yahweh of hosts. And here it occurs 6 times in this little part of this prophecy. And again, I'm not going to spend any more time on this, but if you're interested in looking at this, I think it's interesting. The phrase Yahweh of hosts, that phrase occurs 67 times in the books of Haggai and Zechariah. 67 times. It occurs 14 times in Haggai, in the 2 chapters, and that means it occurs over 53 times in the book of Zechariah. The NET translates this phrase, the Lord of heaven's armies. The REV translates this as Yahweh of armies. This phrase occurs less than 300 times in all of the Old Testament. 1/5 of the uses of Yahweh of hosts is here in Haggai and Zechariah. I think that's significant. I don't think that's a small thing. I think that's something to note. The one that is with them, that is encouraging them to build the temple, who's telling them, I'm with you, do not be afraid, is powerful. He is Yahweh of hosts, or he's the God of heaven's armies. They definitely do not need to be afraid with Yahweh of hosts on their side. So again, if you're interested in studying that, I think it is significant that it occurs that often in these 2 books at this time of the restoration. So now, what does this mean where he says, I'm going to shake heavens and earth? And I wanted to take a little time to look at this because I believe this also really is part of our hope. And so he asks this, he says to them, as for the promise which I made you when you came out of Egypt. So he's referring back to when you came out of Egypt. And once more, in a little while, I'm going to shake the heavens and the earth. See also in the dry land. Here's a couple versions on this word that's translated the promise. I thought these versions handled this well. The REV says, this is the word that I covenanted with you. I believe actually in the Hebrew it means to cut, like cut a covenant. The word I covenanted with you when I came out of Egypt, and my spirit remains among you. Do not be afraid. Yet once more, in a little while, and I will shake heavens and earth. In the NET, he said, I made a promise to your ancestors when they left Egypt, and my spirit even now testifies to you. Moreover, this is what Yahweh of heaven's armies has said, in just a little while, and I will once again shake the sky and the earth. And then the complete Jewish Bible says, this is keeping with the word that I promised in a covenant with you when you came out of Egypt, and my spirit remains with you. So don't be afraid, for this is what Adonai Savat, that's how the Jews say Yahweh. It won't be long before one more time, and I will shake the heavens and the earth. He refers back here to the time when they cut the covenant, that covenant that was made at Mount Sinai, and once more he's going to shake the heavens and the earth. The book of Hebrews actually quotes this here, and when you have a time where you have a verse in the New Testament that refers back to the Old Testament, it often gives understanding, and I think we can learn from here in Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 12 is where this is quoted from. And what it says here is, see to it that you do not refuse him who is speaking. For if those did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, much less will we escape who turn away from him who warns from heaven. And his voice shook the earth then, but now he has promised yet once more, and I will shake not only earth, but also the heaven. This expression, yet once more, denotes the removing of those things which can be shaken, as of created things, so that those things which cannot be shaken might remain. This expression, yet once more. What basically in Hebrews you'll see, he's looking back the first time when they cut the covenant, God shook the earth. And it's a reference, as we saw from Haggai, when the covenant was cut. That happened at Mount Sinai at the giving of the 10 Commandments. When they covenanted with you when you came out of Egypt. Back then, I shook the earth. Hebrews 12 earlier actually discusses this. In verse 18, for you have not come to a mountain that can be touched, and a blazing fire, and to a darkness and gloom and whirlwind, and to the blast of a trumpet and the sound of words, which sound was such that those who begged them no further word be spoken to them, for they could not bear the command, if even a beast touches the mountain, it will be stoned. And so terrible was the sight that Moses said, I am full of fear and trembling. This is referring back to the giving of the 10 Commandments, when he covenanted with them. Back then, he shook the earth. So I thought it would be fun in Exodus, if you want to follow in your Bible or just follow here on the screen. What happened at Mount Sinai? What is he talking about? What is this shaking that happened in the past? Exodus 19 starts in verse 7. So Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all these words which Yahweh had commanded them. And all the people answered together and said, all that Yahweh has spoken, we will do. And Moses brought back the words of the people to Yahweh. And Yahweh said to Moses, behold, I will come to you in a thick cloud, so that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe in you forever. And Moses told the words of the people to Yahweh. And Yahweh said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments. Let them be ready for the third day, for on the third day Yahweh will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. And you shall set bounds for the people all around, saying, beware, that you do not go up on the mountain or touch the border of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall surely be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he will surely be stoned or shot through, whether a beast or man, he shall not live. Don't anybody go on the mountain. Don't bring your beast on the mountain. Don't go up there. You're not going to live. Verse 16. So it came about on the third day, when it was morning, that there were thunder and lightning flashes and a thick cloud upon the mountain and a very loud trumpet sound, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. And Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. And Mount Sinai was all in smoke, because Yahweh descended upon it in fire, and its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked violently. There was an earthquake, and when the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him with thunder. This is what happened when God gave him the 10 Commandments. It was not some small thing. He said, don't anybody come on the mountain. It's there's flashes. Can you see lightnings and thunder? Thunder. Thick cloud on the mountain. And this trumpet sound. Right? And then the earthquake. The whole mountain shaking. And the trumpet gets louder. And then God speaks to them, the 10 Commandments. He speaks audibly from heaven, and they hear God, the voice of God. And in verse 18, after that happens, all the people perceived the thunder and lightning and flashing and sound of trumpet and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled and stood at a distance. Then said to Moses, speak to us yourself, and we will listen, but let God speak to us, or we will die. So they said, Moses, we don't want to hear from God anymore. You go up in the mountain. You tell us what he says, come back down, and we'll agree to it. And so that's what happened. He goes up in the mountain. Then he comes back down. He rehearses the words to him. The people agree to obey the voice of Yahweh. I think this is in chapter 24. And then he offers sacrifices, and he sprinkles blood on the people, and he cuts the Old Testament covenant. That is what happened. That was what the shaking was in the past. And this is what the people perceived in Exodus 24:15. Then Moses went up to the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain, and the glory of Yahweh rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. And the seventh day he called Moses from the midst of the cloud, and the eyes of the sons of Israel, the appearance of the glory of Yahweh was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain. And the mountain was, Moses was there for 40 days and 40 nights. The glory of Yahweh was like a consuming fire. Nothing, if Yahweh does not allow it, it will not stand in his presence. He is a consuming fire. He is Yahweh of hosts, and he shook the people. You know, we were looking at Proverbs on Wednesday night, yes, just last night, at the Vince's fellowship, and he was going through references to the fear of Yahweh. And I got asking myself, in all the things that how beneficial it is to have the fear of Yahweh in your heart. And I was asking myself, what does the fear of Yahweh look like? I think this had the fear of Yahweh. I think these people experienced an awe and reverence for God there at Mount Sinai when that happened. I think they forgot about it 40 days later and they're building the golden calf. But when it happened, they were afraid. They had the fear and awe of God. And then chapter 12 continues there in verse 27. This expression, yet once more, denotes, he's explaining what Haggai's talking about. Yet once more denotes the removing of those things which can be shaken as of created things, so that those things which cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we receive a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us show gratitude by which we may offer to God an acceptable service with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. So what we have here is he's referring back to what happened when they cut the covenant. At that time, they were shaken. The earth was shaken. But he says there's coming in the future, I'm not just going to shake the earth. I'm also going to shake the heavens. And that's what he says here. I'm going to shake the heavens and the earth. And then he also says, I will shake all the nations and all the wealth of the nations. I will fill this house with glory. When God shakes the heavens and the earth in the future, he's also going to shake all the nations. Um, we're not going to look at this part of the third prophecy, but in the third prophecy, this is repeated in Haggai 2:21 through 22. He said, I'm going to shake the heavens and earth. I will overthrow kingdoms and destroy the power of the kingdoms of the nations. Now, from what I understand, this didn't happen at the time of Haggai and Zechariah and the time of Zerubbabel and Joshua. This was a message of the future, of the coming kingdom, of this time when God's setting everything straight. When they came out of Egypt, they were defeating one nation, and the mountain shook. In the future, God is going to shake all the nations, and all the wealth of the world is coming into Jerusalem, and the heavens are going to be shaken. I have these verses in your notes. I'm just going to read through these quickly. But to me, these references in Isaiah and Joel and Revelation and Matthew are all about this future. This is future prophecy about a time in the future when the heavens are going to be shaken. I don't know what that means any more than what we read here. So this is what God says is coming. The day of the Lord is coming, cruel with burning anger to make the land a desolation. He will exterminate its sinners. For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not flash forth. The sun will be dark when it rises. The moon will not shed its light. Thus I will punish the world for its evil and the wicked for their iniquity. I will put an end to the arrogance of the proud, abase the haughtiness of the ruthless. I will make mortal man scarcer than pure gold, and the mankind than the gold of Ophir. Therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will be shaken from its place at the fury of Yahweh of hosts in the day of his burning anger. Isaiah 24:19. The earth is broken asunder, the earth is split through, the earth is shaken violently. The earth reels to and fro like a drunkard, it totters like a shack, for its transgression is heavy upon it, and it will fall, never to rise again. So it will happen in that day that Yahweh will punish the host of heaven on high and the kings of the earth on earth. They will be gathered together like prisoners in dungeon and will be confined in prison. After many days they will be punished. Then the moon will be abased and the sun ashamed, for Yahweh of hosts will reign on Mount Zion. I think also in this understanding, the punishing the heavens, I believe also can be referring to the spiritual powers of the heavens, where he's not just going to be dealing with mankind on earth, he is going to be shaking the host of heaven. All the spirits in the heavens is going to be in this time when this shaking comes in the future. I think that's part of the shaking in the heavens. I put in Joel. I'm not going to read that. You can go back and look at that. But Matthew, Jesus spoke these same words. In Matthew 24, Jesus said, but immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in sky, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send forth his angels with a great trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the four winds from one end of the sky to the other. So the parallels you have, back then God gave his commandments. He covenanted with them and promised them a future. And the earth shook. There was a loud trumpet. In the future, God's going to be making a trumpet. I don't know if we're going to hear it. I'm not sure what that means. The sun's going to be darkened. The moon's not going to have its life. The stars will fall from heaven. The powers of heaven will be shaken, and all the nations will be shaken. This is what the same thing that Haggai is telling these people here. Marianne was asking last week about, did these people think? What did they think? And I wonder that. What did Zerubbabel and Joshua and the people think when Haggai is prophesying this? I wonder if they thought, hey, we're building the temple to bring about the restoration of Zion, the restoration of God's plan, when he is going to shake and all the nations are going to flow, as what Isaiah the prophet spoke about. I kind of think it's similar to the way I think the first century church thought at the day of Pentecost. Is this the time, Lord, when you're going to restore the kingdom? Is this the time when you're going to put all things back together again? That the coming of the Lord is soon. And I think it's similar. Their hope, I think, is similar to our hope and the way we should look at things. That look at God's got this plan. He has promised it. He has spoken about it. And this future is coming. But we know from Hebrews, it hasn't happened yet. He has not yet done this shaking of the heavens, but it's coming. So, real interesting stuff. These are verses in Revelation. These are in your notes. You can look at those on your own, basically telling you the same thing about these stars falling from heaven, the sun turned to darkness, the powers of heaven shaken. This is going to happen. I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but I think it's going to cause the fear of the Lord. Whatever happens when this time, it's going to be a shaking of the nations. He then makes this statement here to close out this prophecy. And he says, talking about this time, the wealth of the nations, I'll fill this house with glory. The latter glory of this house will be greater than the former. Now, we're going to look at the temples later on. There's a prophecy later in Zechariah where we're going to spend more time looking at this. But just to give you a thought, to put this out here yet, I don't think this temple that they built, there's very little information that we have about this temple of Zerubbabel and what it looked like. We know it lasted for hundreds of years. It started Second Temple Judaism. But from what I understand, I don't get the idea that this house that Zerubbabel and Joshua built in 3.5 years exceeded the glory of the house that Solomon built. I just don't think, in the things I've read, and again, we'll look at this in more detail. I also wonder, and I know when we did our Berean fellowship studying Ezekiel and studying these books, when Moses made the tabernacle, he was given specific details of how to build it, what to use, very many details, put the Spirit of God on the men to build it. When Solomon built the temple, David had been given revelation of very many details. Solomon was given revelation of many details. We don't have any details here of how they're supposed to build this temple, how they're supposed to put it, what it's supposed to look like. Were they going to build it based on, you have blueprints, right? You had blueprints with the tabernacle. You had blueprints with the Temple of Solomon. What were their blueprints for this? Did they go back to try and build Solomon's temple? One thought that we had was Ezekiel the prophet in Ezekiel chapter 40 through 42, which is in the 25th year of Ezekiel's captivity, or 14 years after the temple was destroyed. Ezekiel gets a prophecy in Ezekiel 40 through 42 of a new temple with many details about the size of the temple, what it was supposed to look like, how it was supposed to be built. And that would have been in 572 BC. That revelation for Ezekiel occurred just 52 years before this prophecy in Haggai and Zechariah. So, and we brought it up when we studied this. Were they supposed to build Ezekiel's temple? Were they supposed to build that temple? Because that temple's massive compared to Solomon's. And I'm going to show you these later on, but I just wanted to put that out there that they never did this, I don't think. And then he says in this last verse, in this place I will give peace. Again, I don't think that temple, Jerusalem today still hasn't had peace. To this day, this prophecy has not yet been fulfilled. To this day, there has not been a latter house that's been more glorious than the Solomon's temple, where the glory of Yahweh rested on that house. To this day, there's not been peace in Jerusalem. So this is definitely a future looking prophecy. And just as the hope motivates us, I believe this was to motivate those people at that time to build. Because God is going to do one more work. He's going to shake heavens and earth. So don't be afraid. Yahweh of hosts is on your side. Take courage. Do not fear. And I think that's what this, but wrapped in this is this hope of this future shaking of the heavens and the shaking of the nations. Anyway, that's a little bit about that first prophecy. Now, the second prophecy. The second prophecy occurs in chapter 2, verse 10 through 19. And this one occurred on the 24th of the 9th month, the 24th day of the 9th month in the second year of Darius. So this would have been exactly 3 months, right? They started construction on the 24th day of the 6th month, and now it's the 24th day of the 9th month. And that was in Haggai chapter 1, verse 15, that they started construction on the 24th day of the 6th month. So now, 3 months later, they've been working on the temple now for 3 months, and that's when this prophecy is given. They started construction on the 24th day of the 6th month. This prophecy 3 months later on the 24th day of the 9th month. Just to note, if you're keeping track, the first prophecy of Zechariah that we're going to look at next week occurred between these two prophecies. Zechariah's chapter 1, verses 1 through 6 took place in the 8th month of the second year of Darius. So the 6th month is Haggai chapter 1. The second Haggai chapter 2, first verses, is in the 7th month. The first prophecy in Zechariah is in the 8th month. And then this prophecy here to end out Haggai is in the 9th month. So you got the 6th month, 7th month, 8th month, 9th month is this prophecy, this second prophecy that occurred here in Haggai chapter 2. So let me read this, because when we studied this first time, we all read this, we're like, what is he talking about? And I'm going to try and explain this to you. So this is Haggai 2, 10 through 19, the second prophecy here in chapter 2. On the 24th day of the 9th month, in the second year of Darius, the word of Yahweh came to Haggai the prophet, saying, Thus says Yahweh of hosts, ask now the priest for a ruling. If a man carries holy meat in the fold of his garment and touches bread with his fold, or cooked food, wine, oil, or any other food, will it become holy? And the priest answered, No. Then Haggai said, If one who is unclean from a corpse touches any of these, will the latter become unclean? And the priest answered, It will become unclean. Then Haggai said, So is this people, and so is this nation before me, declares Yahweh. And so is every work of their hands, and what they offer there is unclean. But now do consider from this day onward, before one stone was placed on another in the temple of Yahweh, from the time when one came to a grain heap of 20 measures, there would be only 10. When one came to the wine vat to draw 50 measures, there would only be 20. I smote you in every work of your hands with a blasting wind, mildew, and hail, yet you did not come back to me, declares Yahweh. Do consider from this day onward, from the 24th day of the 9th month, from the day when the temple of Yahweh was founded, consider, is the seed still in the barn? Even including the vine, the fig tree, the pomegranate, and the olive tree, it has not borne fruit. Yet, from this day on, I will bless you. What does this mean? So this is one of these things that I had to look at a little bit and say, what's he talking about? So I'll try and explain this, because it's kind of cool, actually, when we get the understanding of what he's saying here. First, he says to them, ask the priest for a ruling. And just remember, Joshua, the high priest, is the high priest of one of the leaders that he's talking to. And he says, ask the priest for a ruling. What does that mean? The ESV says, ask the priest about the law. Ask the priest about the law, I think is a good translation. That's how the NASB says, ask for a ruling. He says, ask the priest about the law. And here's something to understand. For things not specifically explained in the law, the priest was to declare judgment. Here, Haggai asked the priest to make a verdict. And the high priest at this time is Joshua. This was from Deuteronomy 17, where he said, if there's anything too difficult for you to decide one kind of homicide or another, between one kind of lawsuit or another, between one kind of assault or another, being cases of dispute in your courts, when you shall arise, go up to the place which Yahweh your God chooses. So shall you come to the Levitical priest or the judge who was in the office in those days, and you will inquire of them, and they will declare to you the verdict in the case. So that's what's going on. He says, hey, priests. So he asks them this question. And then he says, if a man carries holy meat in the, like, what does that mean if he carries holy meat? If a man carries holy meat in the fold of his garment and touches the bread with his fold, or cooked food, wine, or oil as any other food, will it become unholy? So he's asking the priests this question. So what is holy meat? Holy meat or holy flesh, that is the phrase that's referring to the offering, the sin offering, offered by the priest. The priest would offer a sin offering. In Leviticus 6:25, speak to Aaron his son, saying, this is the law of the sin offering. In the place where the burnt offering is slain, the sin offering shall be slain. The priest who offers it for sin shall eat it. It shall be eaten in the holy place in the court of the Tenemim. Anyone who touches its flesh will become consecrated. When any of its blood splashes on the garment in a holy place, you shall wash what is splashed on it. So here's what he says. That sin offering, when the priest would eat it and touch that sin offering, that would make the priest then holy. It cleansed him. That offering cleansed him. That sin offering did. But now, the holy made the priest offering. But Haggai now asks the question to the priest. Basically, he says, is this holiness transferable? In other words, now you're holy, made holy by that sacrifice, high priest. Now, if your priestly garment goes out and touches anything, can you transfer that holiness to another? Can you make that holy? And the priest gives the answer, which is correct. No. The ruling from the priest is no. The holy meat is similar, I believe, to sacrificial flesh of what Jeremiah the prophet spoke about with the condition of the destruction of the temple and why the first temple was destroyed. In Jeremiah 11, he said, therefore do not pray for this people, nor lift up a cry or prayer for them, for I will not listen to them when they call to me. What right has my beloved in my house when she has done many vile deeds? Can the sacrificial flesh, the holy meat, take away from you your disaster? There's nothing they could do. At the time, they were so far away from God's will, their sin offering didn't mean anything anymore. Now they're about ready to reinstitute these sin offerings. And he's asking them, you offer the sin offering, is it transferable? And the answer is no. You can't transfer that holiness. Now he asks a second question. And the second question is, then Haggai said, now, okay, now if one's unclean, okay, if you're unclean from a corpse that touches any of these, will the latter become unclean? Now this answer was in the law. In the law of Moses, in Leviticus 24, it says, whosoever touches anything that is unclean, contact the dead, the person who touches such a thing shall be unclean. So what Haggai's basically saying is look at, the sacrificial sin can make the high priest holy. He can't transfer that holy to somebody else. But on the other hand, if he touches and becomes unholy and then touches something, he can make things unholy. He doesn't have the ability to make it holy. It really kind of shows the inability in ourselves to get holy, the inability in ourselves to be sanctified, to sacrifice for ourselves. It has to be God's doing. Um, and the priest answered, it will become unclean. Now Haggai provides, what does he get? Here's the understanding. Then Haggai said, so is this people, and so is this nation before me, declares Yahweh of hosts, and so is every work of their hands. For what they offered there is unclean. Remember what was happening before they built the temple? What we looked at last time in Ezekiel, where he said in chapter 1, he said, you try and make work, but you have holes in it. You can't make money. The ground doesn't prosper. You're not prospering. They were offering, but they weren't doing the will of God. They didn't have it in themselves, in their own ability to make themselves holy. All they could do is make unholiness. And he said, you're unclean. Your sacrifices were unclean. And here he says, do consider, before one stone was placed on another in the temple, from that time, one came to give 20 stones, there'd only be 10. Again, not prospering. You came to a wine vat, you draw 50, you only get 20. I smote you with every work of your hands and blasting mildew, yet you did not come back to me. I did all these things, and you were unclean, trying to do this on your own. He's referring back to their condition from chapter 1, before they began the work rebuilding the temple. When they, doing their own works, trying to do this on their own, when they were not relying on Yahweh, they were not prospering. Their sacrifice, their work was unclean. Their work did not produce. But now he provides hope, because now they are doing his will. Now they are building the temple as he has commanded. Now they are taking courage in Yahweh. Now Yahweh of hosts, who's going to shake heaven and earth, Yahweh of armies, is on their side. And now they are doing his will. And what he says now, but consider from this day onward. And he says it again, do consider from this day onward. And then he says, yet from this day on, I will bless you, because now you're doing his work. And your work means something. And your work is profitable. And your work is glorifying God. When in the past, when you were doing it on your own, you can't do it on your own. You can't do it on your own. You can't make yourself holy. You needed the sin offering. When they were relying on themselves, doing their own work, they did not prosper, and their offerings were unclean. But now, as they walk according to God's command, in the context here is building the temple, doing God's work. From this day onward, God would bless their work. And it kind of, to me, this kind of sounds similar, to bring understanding for us, to the book of Ephesians, where he says, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and not of yourselves. You didn't do this on your own. It is the gift. And that word gift in the Greek is the duran. It's the offering of God. It was the offering of his son, Jesus Christ. Not as a result of works, so that no one can boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand so that we would walk in them. We've been called to do work, but we're not going to do it on our own, just as they needed that truth in their hearts. So that's a little bit about that second prophecy. I'm not going to do this one tonight. I think that's enough to think about. So questions to consider from this tonight. What can we learn? To me, the takeaways from this chapter 2, these first two prophecies, Zerubbabel and Joshua, the people building at that time, they did not need to fear. Yahweh of hosts was with them. Yahweh of the armies, of heaven's armies. And he is going to bring to pass his promise. And in the end, the way this is all going to end up in the future, the glory of the future house will surpass the former glory. It's going to surpass the glory of the Temple of Solomon. Before, they were relying on their own work, and they were unclean. But now, they are doing God's work. And from this day on, God will bless them. Really the motivation is continue working, continue building, so that God may be glorified, so that you will be blessed, continue in this work of God. And I think this has a lot. I think this shaking in the heavens and the earth, again, I don't think this happened then. I think this is a time that's coming when God is going to shake not only the earth, he's going to shake the heavens. The powers of heaven will be shaken, as well as all the nations, and the wealth of the nations is going to again come to Jerusalem. This is the coming kingdom of God. This is the promise that was then. And the glory of Yahweh again will fill Jerusalem, and there will be peace. And that's still our hope today. And practically for us today, I think we too have this same future promise. I think that same promise, it's quoted in Hebrews, still hasn't come to pass. And what we're looking for is an unmovable kingdom. It is something that God, Yahweh of hosts, is going to bring to pass. He promised it. It's absolutely going to happen. But as we work towards that day, it's not in ourselves. It's not in ourselves that we move towards that day. It's in God's grace. It is in the offering of God, it is in the sacrifice of Jesus Christ that we put our rely, so that we too today can do the work of God as we look towards that coming day when the heavens are shaken. So there's a little bit from Haggai chapter 2. We'll finish out next time with the rest of that final one. It's a short 4 verses. And then we'll get into Zechariah chapter 1.